Okay, I mentioned this news briefly earlier in the show, but I just wanted to go into it in a little bit more detail. Trump's Justice Department announced plans today to deploy election monitors to polling sites in 2 states next month: California, where voters will decide whether or not to fight Trump's plan to steal congressional seats through redistricting, and New Jersey, where there is a big bellwether race for governor we were just talking about. Now, federal election monitors are not entirely unusual, but what is very unusual about this decision is the fact that the Trump administration is doing this during an off-year election, when there are no candidates running for federal office. According to Democracy Docket, in the past 20 years, DOJ has only sent election monitors in off-year elections twice, in 2007 and in 2013. And let's just zoom in on where they are doing this. Among the 6 jurisdictions where Attorney General Pam Bondi is sending federal poll watchers, 5 are in California and 1 is in New Jersey. And you can see them right here on your screen there. That's the list of them. Now, 4 of those counties, Kern County, Riverside County, and Fresno County, California, along with the usually solid blue Passaic County, New Jersey, they all swung for Trump in the last presidential election. Plus, Orange County and Los Angeles County are 2 counties with competitive House races next year. These counties are important for various reasons. They were not chosen at random, which is why today one of the top election law experts in the country, Rick Hasen, called this a test run for 2026. Rick Hasen is the director of Safeguarding Democracy Project and professor of political science at the UCLA School of Law, and he joins me now. Thank you so much for being here. I think all of us are just trying to make sense of this and what it really means. I agree with you. I think it's a powerful thing for people to hear that this is a test run for 2026, and people should hear that. Tell us, though, from your vantage point as an elections legal expert, what is that? Why do you describe it that way? Why do you see it that way?
Sure. Well, it is unusual for the Department of Justice to send in monitors. We should talk about when it started. It started back in the 1960s, back when southern states were depriving Black voters of the ability to vote. You had to send in federal registrars to register voters, monitors to make sure that polls were being open. And, the whole idea was to ensure free and fair elections. Well, so far as I know, there's no problem in those counties that you identified with free and fair elections. And so the question is, what are these federal monitors going to be looking for? It seems like they're going there at the supposed invitation of the state Republican parties claiming irregularities. I'm worried either that there might be an attempt at intimidation, or more likely, this is part of a long-standing Republican playbook to threaten sending election monitors, election challengers, election observers into polling places, perhaps to try to deter those voters from showing up. And if these are going to be the places where there are going to be competitive congressional races in 2026, they might want to see how things go first in 2025 in an off-year election before they expand what they might do perhaps in areas around the country where there are going to be competitive congressional elections.
Yeah, and a couple of those areas in California would likely be, potentially be in 2026. I wanted to ask you about this one area of New Jersey, because I'm betting, and I always like to pre-butt explanations, so the justification from DOJ to the degree to answer questions about it will be, that they will make it about this 2020 investigation that was launched by the then state attorney general involving multiple Paterson City Council members, which resulted in charges being filed. I would guess that that's going to be their explanation for why they need election monitors there. But what do you think about them going to that county specifically, and what could be how they will justify it, or is there justification for it at all?
Well, so there are pockets around the country. We saw this in North Carolina in a Republican congressional race back in 2018, and we saw it in 2020 in the this Paterson, New Jersey race, where you had elected officials apparently manipulating absentee ballots to try to swing the results of an election. And, it's really hard to try and do that because we have so many safeguards. That's why there have been indictments. That's why there have been attempts to remove some of these people from office. But even what happened there, that was an election that took place during COVID. Nothing taking place in polling places. Very hard to see what the connection would be there. And of course, these areas are going to be under county control, not city control. So it's really hard to understand what the connection would be between what DOJ is saying they're trying to protect against and the actual problems that we saw 5 years ago in this small city in New Jersey.
Unless it's a state that is becoming more purple and they want to do a test run, as you've kind of said, which may be the actual justification. I wanted to ask you while I have you, I was just talking with my last guest, James Carville, just about some of the comments of Steve Bannon and the political, how seriously we should take it, declaring, of course, that Trump is going to run in 2028, and they somehow have multiple plans for how they're going to skirt around the 22nd Amendment. I wanted to first get your thoughts about it, but also help explain to our viewers who are kind of freaked out when they hear that, how states and the courts can make sure the law is upheld if they attempt to do this.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head when you talked about the fear. And I heard James Carville talk about being afraid. Remember who Steve Bannon is. He's the guy who said we have to flood the zone with shit. We need to make liberals' heads explode. That's exactly what he's trying to do. I mean, this is getting coverage on cable news and elsewhere because it's scary, the thought that Trump might try to get around the Constitution through some convoluted scheme, maybe where J.D. Vance runs for president and Trump runs as vice president, and then J.D. Vance resigns, or the Supreme Court totally ignores the language of the 22nd Amendment, and an 83-year-old person who is very low in popularity is actually going to run for president and successfully run? And is he going to run against Barack Obama, who then also be able to get a third term? I'm much more concerned about the security and fairness of the elections in 2026 than I am about a potential Trump third term in 2028.
That's a very important reminder. There are a lot of elections before then. We never want to kind of overstate or scare people, but given the context of all of this, I just wanted to ask you about it, and obviously my last guest about it. Rick Hasen, thank you so much for being here and helping make sense of everything we're seeing out there. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.